So this is going to be a book review. The one guy, Man Without a Pop Culture, actually requested that I just review whatever. So this is a book that I read years ago. One White Star by Gladys Carrol. Or let's see, yeah, Gladys Hasty Carrol. Basically, it's just a book my mom bought me when I was 17, and it's an older book. It was published in 1955. Yeah. Do they want her to teach there again? Perhaps, but I don't think she will. She hasn't gone to the school. She's gone to the house where you used to live. Oh, did my father send for her? No, hang up your jacket, dear. Now come and sit on my footstool. It's getting too dark for me to sew. We'll just talk. I wonder how you feel about your father, Lolly. You see, I've never known him. Grandpa and I brought up your mother in this house. Your grandfather was a very fine man. He went to college and studied law with an old lawyer here in town. And then he had an office and wrote wills and deeds and advised people. He didn't like trial cases. He didn't like to talk, but he liked to read and write. He was a quiet man, much older than I. So you can kind of get a feel of how this is written. Let's see, yeah, that's right. The main character's name was Effie. She was a woman, yeah, Laura was the name. Yeah, I kind of forgot their names. But it's a very slow progressing book. Basically, it's just about a woman from her littlest childhood growing up on a farm with her mother and her father. A divorce happens. Her mother moves to the city with her grandmother. And a few more years go by. They go to this church in the town. She gets infatuated with the preacher here, the guy with the white hair. This is actually her. The book describes her as having blonde hair. She's right there. I forgot. I think it says she goes to school. Her grandmother dies. She gets a job. I don't want to spoil it, but she marries the preacher, even though he's like 20 years older than her. But it's what they do. It describes her early marriage with the preacher. She has a child with him. And several years go by. And so that's basically the story. It just goes on and on over the course of many years. Eventually she's in her 50s. Her daughter is now getting married. And the preacher guy, he starts to believe in celibacy. And so he decides, well, the only thing for me to do now is to become a chaplain. So he goes off to the Second World War. And he disappears on a ship with several other men. And he's never heard of again. And and I think because he dies, it's now the 1950s, she falls in love with some politician guy. I think he's like 15 years younger than her. So she married a preacher. He was 20 years older than her, but now she's marrying a guy who's 15 years younger than her. But yeah, she falls in love with him in the book. It doesn't say how they fell in love, but it just, at the very end, like the last page, it says, yeah, the wedding is for them, or something, that they're the ones getting married. Yeah, Mrs. Paul Leslie, that becomes her name. Yeah, Paul Leslie is the name of the preacher. Yeah, the main character's name is Laura. She marries Paul Leslie, and then she marries a politician guy, I think. Yeah, something about... I think the politician guy's name is Sean. I'm not too sure. So it's a book that is overall, I guess you can say it's kind of depressing, because she lives such a disappointing life. It describes early on how she has a good relationship with her father, but her mother divorces her father, because he's just a simple farmer and she wants to live in the city. And so she goes throughout her young childhood sad that now her father is gone. And so that's the early part of the book. And her mother just detests their father for some reason. Later on in the book, it says that she goes back to the farm and, she meets someone from there and she learns more about her dad. How he was always a well-meaning man, but the mom didn't give him a chance or something. Like I say, the book, overall, it's kind of depressing. It's a slow read, it builds up. I guess it basically is just the story of just a woman, you know. A woman who was born in the 1910s, then through the 20s, just from that time. And so what's my overall opinion? I don't know what else to think. It's just a realistic story, I guess. Stuff like this could have happened. It has some bright moments, like when she gets married to the preacher and they have a fight, and then he comes back, he says, look, I forgive you, you don't need to feel sad. It raises some interesting points about being in a relationship with someone. Yeah, it has no moral. This thing has no moral, has no resolve. It's just, in the end, her daughter's now grown up, and she marries this politician dude. That's it. And hopefully that marriage was happy for her, and, The preacher guy, Leslie Paul, or Paul Leslie, he was interesting, So he has a kid with her, and then after that he decides he's going to be celibate, right? So now they have a marriage without that. It's awkward for me because people are outside my door, and so, yeah, like a few years later, World War II happens, and he goes off and becomes a chaplain, and he disappears on a ship. They sunk on the ocean or something. What would be hilarious is if what would be hilarious is if the preacher, since he's sunk in the ocean, he becomes this dude. That's the preacher 10 years later, haunting the ocean.